In this video, I explain how I manage my time as a full-time game developer. I think this video could help a lot of people, even if you're not a game developer, because I have a pretty unique system that manages well with like having bad and good days. And if you have a lot of variation in how much you can work each day, I feel like the system is going to be a big help to you. Scheduling and managing your time is pretty important in game development because you need to be able to divide your attention between a lot of different things as a game developer, and you need to be able to prioritize what's more important and stuff like that. It's a whole thing. It's pretty individual as well, especially if you have a team compared to if you're solo. I'm a solo game dev, so that impacts how this schedule works for me. I think this schedule could also work very well for freelancers in general, just anyone who like works for themselves. This could be a very helpful way to schedule your time. So before we get into all of this, please check out my game Open Fishing XL on Steam. It's an open world fishing game with like PS1-y graphics. I've worked on for a while now. It's pretty fun. It's cool. I'm adding features all the time. I'm currently working on boats as I'm recording this video. Maybe that's out yet. Maybe it's not. It's going to be update 10. It's in early access. It's pretty cool. And I hope you'll check it out and support the channel. Now back to scheduling. So I'll go into first why I don't use the traditional time blocking system. Time blocking system is a word I made up for the system where you have like, oh yeah, at 9 I do this, at 10 I do this, a general like calendar system that a lot of people use. Like Google Calendar is kind of designed for this. I don't like that system personally because it's very restrictive. It's very like, it often makes me feel like if I mess up one part of the schedule, I can't do anything else in the schedule after that. It's a bit like a mental thing. For example, if I plan to work on 9, but I have something at 9, I'll often feel like, oh no, now I've messed this up. So now I feel kind of like bad. Not like that bad, but like I won't feel as happy as if I had done the thing. And then doing the next thing in schedule is harder. So maybe I messed that one up. And then it just cascades into the entire day that just, oh no, everything's going wrong. So that generally leads me to have having worse days as if I'm already having a bad day. Another reason I don't use a traditional time blocking system is that it tends to block me from doing work later on in the day because I tend to work early. But if I then suddenly get energy like at 3 p.m., then I will kind of block myself from doing extra work because sometimes I just feel like working and then I can't because, oh no, it's not on schedule. And it's just kind of like harder to get into a work state if you're like, oh no, but I should be doing this thing instead because that's plugged into the schedule here. So that's something I also really dislike about it. So my system is quite radical, but you can always tone it down if you want and remove this step. But the first step to making my system work is that I have a list of all the activities I'm allowed to do. So that's generally productive things or things I just have to do. So I have 3 categories: obligations, productive, and rest. So I have my piece of paper here, which has all the activities I'm allowed to do. It's like quite a limited list, which I encourage you to do too. Like only add the things you really have to do to be happy and to get your work done to this list. Of course, I don't do this always. I'll budge and watch YouTube from time to time, but I try to avoid that. Check out my video Mental Health if you want to know more about like how my approach to bad habits works. But this isn't like a required thing of the system. You can also just use it more flexibly if you want. So I encourage you to start with creating a list of the activities you really need to do to be happy. Make this list quite short. I started with just a flat list and then I divided that into each category. So my list only includes productive activities. Try to also do that, but if you don't want to, like that's fine. But I feel like it's really helped me to only do productive things all day. The productive things include the rest, of course, like yoga and stuff and walks and activities that you really enjoy. Like reading is one for me. I like reading. I'm trying to like reading. But yeah, so start with making that big list and then divide it up in smaller categories and then move on to the next step, which is actually making a list for your day. So of course you might not always do everything that's on this list, but try to stick to it as best you can. And also this list that I have here didn't start out like this today. So this list started out as much shorter. I'll get into what you should do in the evenings to make it like a morning starting list. But generally speaking, I have the activities I do before and just after showering. And then after those activities, I just leave blank and I add those later on in the day. So for example, if I completed the list or if I was completed the list, I just add the other activities I still want to do that day. Now the specific activities I do aren't that important. It's more important to fit in what you do in a day and what you want to do in a day. So for example, how I use this schedule is I complete a certain list of activities and then I run out of activities to do and then I instantly add more things that I all do in order. So another thing about the system is I don't do things in time blocks, generally speaking. I've always listed activities in order of doing them and not in like how long I do them, because otherwise I often find in the traditional time blocking system they'll think, oh yeah, I have to work for 2 hours because I said 2 hours, and I work for 90 minutes, and I'm like, man, I messed up. I didn't do what I wanted to do. And then, but like 90 minutes is still great if you're doing like deep focused work. So that's something I really didn't dislike about the other system, and that's why I created this system to work for me. So another thing I've added on recently is a task list. So I've added a certain list of tasks I have to do that day. It's stuck to my table, so I can't actually show you. But essentially, it's just what you need to do that day for like work tasks. And I like to add that because before I would just remember it, and then I'll often forget, like, oh hey, yeah, I had to do this thing, and then it's just gone from my mind for the rest of the day, and then I forget to do it, like posting on Twitter. So stuff like that is something you should probably like add to your task list. But I used to do it without this, and the system still worked. It just like it was a little suboptimal. I recommend you make this task list the day before actually executing all the tasks because you don't want your morning mind to be blocked up by all the dumb stuff you need to write down that you still have to do that day. You don't want to do much thinking before like you did your main work for that day. We'll get into that later. So I always like to list the activities I do next morning from most important and like most deep work to least important and least deep work. Currently reading deep work still. I have a video on it about the Pomodoro technique and why I don't like it for game development. You can check that out below. Or maybe I'll put it in a card, maybe there, maybe, who knows. But yeah, as I said, like you should try to keep your most important tasks first and then get less and less intense throughout the day. So this system has pros and cons compared to the usual system a lot of people use, which I feel like the main pro to this system is it's way more flexible than other systems. And another big thing is that it adapts very well to having good or bad days. So if you're having a terrible day, you might not want to do as much work as you usually would. A usual schedule would have a harder time adapting to that and also adapting to your day, improving afterwards. So for example, you might make a schedule every morning or every last evening. So if your day really starts improving halfway through, I wouldn't want to use a traditional system because then I couldn't like change up what I'm going to do that day as easily. So another great thing about the system, rather than just doing whatever you want at the time, is it still helps your discipline. So you can plan in activities that you can do slightly later on in the day and that are optimally difficult for you to do at that moment. So you don't want to do activities that are too easy, but if you're doing activities that are like way too difficult, like if I told myself right now you have to work for 2 hours, I'm not going to be able to do that at all. So that would not help my discipline skill much. I'll go more over the discipline skill in a later video, but so I would say the main disadvantage of the system is that you have more work on your schedule. Like you need to schedule more stuff in the entire day compared to if you just made one schedule for the entire year and then you just followed that every single day. Another disadvantage that some people might run into is that the system is a little laxer, so it's easier to just go like, oh no, I'll do that later, I'll do that another time, because you don't have the pressure of having a steady, same everyday schedule. So my main recommendation to people right now would be make the initial list and really start the system right now. Because if you wait and think like, oh no, I'll do this tomorrow, you're probably not going to do it. So I always like people to take action right away after watching a video of mine. Right away, implement the stuff I've taught you right now. Don't watch another video of mine. Implement this stuff like right away. I want you to just go do whatever I said in this video and then come back later and just see if it worked well for you. So that was the video. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something, and I hope you play my game, Open Fishing Excel. Yada yada yada. Like and subscribe, and goodbye.